at 2023, girl?
Because I came in hot, Ty. I
She came
don't do
in
the
hot,
most,
y'all.
but I do a lot.
Look, y'all see her? Y'all see her? She's already rapping this morning, right? We're talking. We are on here today at in Be Worth Funding because we have so many organizations out here trying to get funded, right? Trying to get this money, trying to get these millions, like Dr. Mabry is. She's my guest for today, Dr. Annise Mabry, with the Mabry Foundation, right? She's going to talk to us a little bit about evaluation, about the importance of setting your organization up in a way that it attracts funding. Because a lot of times, y'all, we just chasing the dollars. We're just chasing it. We're chasing it. Nothing is chasing us. And I always like to make the scenario, Doc. I said, you know what? When we're chasing stuff and we're not in shape, we give out a breath, right? I'm talking about myself because I'm, getting old over here. I'm middle aged, chasing things, and I don't have a good diet, right? I'm not. I don't have to drink enough. I drink water all the time, but I can do a little bit better. I don't exercise like I should. When my dog starts to running around and I start to chase him, it takes me about 5 seconds to stop because I am out of breath. I'm not in shape to chase him. He's going to get away from me. It works better when I call him and he comes to me because that's what it's about. I don't want to have to chase him. I want him to pursue me. I want him to see that I have what he needs. I got my goodies over here. I got the puppy chow and the treats ready, and he comes to me. So I would, want to see more organizations, even though, there's funding available. A lot of us kind of run behind the wrong things at the wrong time, things that we're not ready for, instead of positioning ourselves and getting the treats and getting the doggy bag ready, so the funds can come to us. And a lot of times the reason why the funds are not coming to us is because of things like evaluation, things like being able to show your results, being able to show on the front end why is there even a need for what it is that I'm trying to do. I can go and I can ask people all the time, what's your mission? And they'll tell me something and I go, okay, so why is that important? And they'll say something that's not researched or not solid, evidence, and they just kind of make up stuff a lot of times. I want to do this. Well, why do you want to do that? And who told you that this was an important thing? What kind of data exists to show you that there's a need for this thing? And I think that you've been doing a great job, Doc, just pulling it all together because I call this lady Dr. Splash, y'all, because I'm a Warriors fan, right? I'm a Warriors fan. And the Splash Brothers are my guys. But when Dr. Splash, when I tell you she be making those buckets like shooting threes, and I say shooting threes, she up here sitting on all this grant money. So we want to break her because she knows how to win. Anyway, I'm Ty Boone. I am owner of Ty Boone Consulting, and I am here with the Be Worth Funding movement with my special guest, Dr. Annise Mabry. Y'all, I'm telling y'all, we're gonna talk about it though. Let's get into this whole thing about the Mabry Foundation. What do you do? Who you are? Who do you serve? Let's start right there and talk a little bit about the impact that you make, and we'll get into some evaluation stuff.
Well, thank you, Ty, for having me on your show today. Podcasting is very near and dear to my heart because I also own my own podcast network, the Back to Us Radio Network, which was one of the first podcast networks to be owned by an African American lesbian to be syndicated in the UK, and our shows are still in syndication today. And this was over 10 years ago when I started podcasting. So I'm so excited to be here. I started my nonprofit organization in 2016. And unlike most people, I never had a desire to have a nonprofit organization. The only reason I started a nonprofit was because I was a homeschool mom and I needed to buy curriculum for my son. And the curriculum vendor told me, we can only sell to a nonprofit organization or to a K-12 institution. I knew I didn't want to become a K-12 institution. So I said, okay, let's become a nonprofit organization. And when my attorney was setting up my 501c3, he said, what do you want to call your nonprofit? I said, I don't care what you call it. I just need to be able to buy this curriculum. And he's like, well, I need a name. I said, just call it the Dr. Annise Mabry Foundation. And so that's how the foundation was born. That's how the work was started. And my focus, again, it started out as just being able to buy curriculum for my kids. What I found out in trying to buy curriculum for my kids is that the reason this particular curriculum vendor only wanted to sell to schools or nonprofits is because they had a mandatory minimum purchasing requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I only needed one license, but I had to buy in sets of 100 or 25. So the first year, I bought 25 licenses. I only used one, and I'm looking at the other 24, and I'm like, okay, so if I'm having this problem and my child is on the autism spectrum and he's struggling with reading, I know that there's got to be 24 more families just like me out there. So I just need to find them. So my initial service goal and service reach was to give away 24 curriculum licenses to parents who had children who were struggling with reading or auditory processing disorders.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked great my first year. Fast forward to the second year, my neighbor's daughter came to me and was like, hey, I need a high school diploma. I know that you homeschooled your daughter through high school. Will you help me get my high school diploma? And I was like, well, I homeschooled her all the way through high school, but you've dropped out of school. So I said, I think I can do this the same way that we do in college. And, just get a copy of your transcript and you just take the classes that you need. So I went out and I retained the HSLDA, which is Homeschool Legal Defense Association. I retained their law services.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I need you to research and tell me everything that you can about homeschool law in Georgia. And what age is the cutoff age for a parent to be able to issue a homeschool high school diploma? So they called me back and they said, well, Dr. Mabry, there are no homeschool graduation requirements in Georgia. Parents determine it. And there is no age, there's no cutoff age. I said, so when you say no cutoff age, I said, are you saying 18? And the attorney said, no. He said, there is no age. He said, as long as that person is the student's parent or guardian, he said, they can issue a homeschool high school diploma. I said, so somebody 48 years old could get a homeschool high school diploma from their parent? He said, absolutely. I was like, holy guacamole, Batman.
Right?
Look, I mean, Ty, talk about game changer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when he told me that, it was like a light bulb in my head went off, because one of the things that I knew when I had been in higher education and when I had taught in the adult literacy arena was that people struggled with passing the GED program.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what my neighbor's daughter was challenged with, was she couldn't pass the GED. So when I figured all of this out for my neighbor's daughter, and, we got her graduated and her mom posted, her mom made the post on Facebook. Little did I know that she was the first high school graduate in her entire family, meaning that her mom didn't have a high school diploma. Her grandmother didn't have a high school diploma. Her stepfather didn't have a high school diploma. And within a year, I got all 4 of them high school diplomas.
Wow.
So from there, that created my target population. And my target population became adults without a high school diploma, homeless LGBTQ youth, sex trafficking survivors, youth aging out of foster care, and youth aging out of the public school system. So those are my 5 people that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward to 2018, I had gotten a grant from State Farm, and they given me $25,000 to do this high school diploma program.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to partner with one city, and the mayor of that city was up for reelection. And I thought that he and I had a great relationship. Turned out we didn't. And well, his exact words to me is, this is an election year and I can't see myself tied to a lesbian. Maybe we can connect after the election. And I was like, okay, well, after the election, this grant funding is going to be null and void. After your election, I'm going to have a program that I produce no results for, and I'm going to have to give this money back, and I'll never get funded from them again. after your election, it'll be too late. So I said, and I thanked him, and I was very polite because I'm a firm believer of not every bridge you have to burn. Now, I'll burn a bridge in a minute, but
I'll blaze it up, put some lighter fluid on it to keep
you
this from.
know, I and sometimes I'll even burn it while I'm standing on it.
Oh, don't. I don't
But
think.
I was like, this isn't a bridge that I need to burn.
Yeah, that's there,
I
right?
was like, this is just somebody who's ignorant, and you can't change ignorance even if you burn the bridge. So I went down to Macon County, Georgia, and I walked into a police department and said, "Hey, I've got this money to do a diploma program. Your community has over 38% of your 18 to 24-year-olds and 38% of your 24 to 35-year-olds without a high school diploma." And the chief looked at me and said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "You're at a critical tipping point." And so the chief said, "Well, let me do some research." So as people were coming in to report for state probation, the chief of the police department got her chair and sat outside the door and had a clipboard and started asking people, "Do you have a high school diploma?" 9 out of 10 people reporting for state probation did not have a high school diploma. So then we started working with the State Department of Probation, and we said, okay, so if these people got a high school diploma, would you be willing to waive some of their probation fines? And they said yes. So we had our incentive.
Mm-hmm.
And, so what we started doing is, and I told her, I said, okay, I said, I've got enough funding to put 13 people in the program. And she had a list of about 40 people who were eligible. And so she gave me the list and she said, okay, well, you pick which 13 are worthy enough to get in. And she's like, then you call the others and tell them that they don't deserve it.
Oh.
I was like, she said, or you can go find the money to put everybody in.
I know you did that because that's what you do, right?
That's what I do. And that's what I did.
Right?
And fast forward, it's almost 4 years later, that program has produced over 140 graduates in that one county.
Wow.
They now have 2 new industries that have come to that county because they have a workforce. And the other thing is, this program has become a model program for community policing.
Mm-hmm.
It's an innovative model program for prevention-focused community policing.
Mm-hmm.
So I said all of that to say, when you are starting out and you're setting up these programs, number one, you better know who your target audience is, and you better know who you want to serve, and you better know why. And the only way you get that is doing your data. You gotta have your data. Your data has to drive your program, not your program drive the data. And I think that's where a lot of people miss the mark, is they try to create a program because it's something that they want to do, but the existing data doesn't support it.
Mm-hmm. And I like how you brought the data to the police officers, right? You're like, look, this is what you put it in their face. This is what this looks like in this area. And the response was kind of like, oh, really? Like shocked. Like I didn't even know that. I didn't. And because you brought it to them and they were interested in what you had to say, they go outside and they ask, well, how many of you guys have graduated? Because there's a correlation. And if you do research and you understand what correlation and causation and all this kind of stuff is, you see pretty quickly that, hey, you know what? We know that if kids who drop out of high school or folk who don't get a diploma are more likely to go to jail, are more likely to do these things. Police officers already know that. They just didn't know the statistics behind it. So you walked up in there and you said, look, I got some stats for you.
Yes.
And you can't deny the statistics. This is not something that I made up. This is factual information that this many people in your community have not received a high school diploma or cannot pass the GED or whatever. And guess what? I'm not just bringing you this problem. I have the solution. Right?
And that's what grant funders want to see. Every time I have gone after a grant, it has aligned with something that those funders want to see, because a lot of people chase the grant money, like you said earlier. And one thing that I always tell people is whatever you chase is going to always run from you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just have to be still and let it come to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're chasing it, then it's probably not meant for you to have.
Right. It's trying to go somewhere else, right? It's like
Yes,
leaving.
yes,
I'm leaving, right? And it's, you said if you're chasing it, it's probably not meant for you. The thing is, about having to wait. Sometimes people just kind of get impatient with it because 4 years later you graduated so many people. Even though you got off to a pretty good start, I never heard like the beginning of your story. I know that you started this around your kids, but I didn't know about the neighbor and her family and all this. I was like, dang, Doc, you really splashing. You like doing double threes over here. You can set a record. You got look, but you talk about time from 1 year to 4 years, how long it took you to graduate these many people, and then you collected data and built relationships and partnerships along the way. Even the burned bridges that you had to cross or set on fire, you had to do that first in order to get to where you were going, because you learned something every step of the way. Okay, who's on your team, who's not on your team, you knew that, right? Who to
yes.
pursue, who not to pursue, who would be more interested in what you had to say regardless of everything else that's going on in the background. Who would find this information most beneficial? The police department. Because guess what, we already know the statistics, and we know that if you want to keep these rates down, we got to put these rates up. So we need to have you to graduate, we need to have you to be, get careers or do whatever it is. And I'm here to solve that problem for you. And I think, other than this work, you do a lot of other work too. Doc is also, she's a consultant, she writes grants. She When I tell you she's flashing, she's flashing. I'm not playing. You got to go look her up. But the partnerships that you've been able to form, right?
Hmm.
Being able to get your kids from step A to step B, and even their families thinking on a different level, is what I call impactful. When you said, "Hey, I served this kid, but her grandmom, her mom." You talk about the things that we kind of lazily mention all the time about generational changes and creating changing the trajectory for my lineage and things like that. You did that in one household because you got this girl, you got her, and a lot of times it's harder to go back and get the grandmama. You got the grandma, you got the mama, and then what does that mean for her offspring and people that she's going, in the future? That impact is just so huge. And I want to talk a little bit about, your service and the impact that you make with the students that you serve. Um, the kind of data that you collect moving forward. What are the things that you're looking at for your kids? How do you know that you're making a difference with them, and why do funders need to know that?
So I will start with what data do we collect moving forward? Um, our first data point happens when we're getting ready to get our students graduated, because they have to produce a mandatory 1,200 word writing assignment. And this writing assignment is called Facing My Fear and Achieving My Dream Career.
Mm-hmm.
And in that assignment, they identify what they want to do with their high school diploma. Over 80% of our graduates say that they either want to go to technical college immediately after they graduate, or they have a plan to go at some time within the next 12 months. During the pandemic, the class of 2020, when the whole world was shut down, okay, 100% of my graduates applied to and got accepted into technical colleges. All of them got Pell Grants to go to school, so none of them had any school debt. Two of them have already graduated, and they are now at the university working on, one is working on her degree in education, one is working on a degree in accounting.
Oh,
And just 5 years earlier, they were both high school dropouts, both receiving public assistance, both, both of them working. One was working 3 part-time jobs, and her utilities were always getting cut off. So that's the kind of data that we track. How have we made your life better? And
mm-hmm.
I call it the better than. The other data point that we track is your income. What income were you receiving 5 years ago? What income are you receiving now? And what income are you looking to make 5 years from now? With this population that I work with, a lot of times they forgot how to dream. They
Mm.
forgot how to have hope, because hope is something that you can't have when you're working three part-time jobs. You can't have hope and sleep. So they choose
Girl,
sleep.
I like that. I'm gonna get a T-shirt because I like that you can't have hope and sleep, right?
Yeah,
Be able to look at your kids as individuals, and sometimes I think that's why it's harder for a lot of organizations to even decide what kind of data they need to collect. If this person walks into your organization, what kind of problems do you solve for this person, right? And how does everybody else who comes into your organization relate to that same thing? Sometimes we try to think about 50 people at one time. You're saying, this one person, they're working three jobs. You're wanting them to have hope. They can't have hope because they're tired. What are
because they're
you doing?
tired. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to go back to something that you said earlier. When someone comes into your organization and they have a multitude of problems, one of the things that I see a lot of new nonprofits try to do is they try to be everything. They try to solve all of that person's problem like a one-stop shop.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to me when I tell you this, baby, you are not a Walmart. You are not a Sam's Club. You cannot get your prescriptions, your eyeglasses, your food, and your oil changed all in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a nonprofit organization, you need to know your mission, your vision, and your scope, and you stay within that mission, vision, and scope. You
Mm-hmm.
partner with organizations to provide those other services. If your nonprofit organization is working to help people, um, find food, then that's what you do. You give them food, but you give them a referral for housing. You don't go into rapid rehousing because somebody needs housing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't start a GED program because somebody says, I want to get my GED.
Right.
You partner with an educational services provider.
And everything. I always talk about SWOT analysis, and knowing your strengths and knowing what you do and how you work. And you're right. And you're one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was about partnerships and relationships, and why you even get into these things. And you already said it, because there are only so many things you can do and only so many things you should do, right? Because this is what your scope is. If I'm going to provide be the GED program provider, I can provide shelter, but maybe it's not time for that. Maybe that's not my mission to do. Maybe I'm saying, hey, I'm just helping kids to get into college, but if she needs some sleep, we're gonna have to send her over here. Now they're my friends over here, so when I get into these big $1 million grants that Doc is into, I can talk about these partners that I have, because funders want to see that, hey, we're touching Doc, but we're touching everybody in this community, because she has a partnership with these people across town. We're not going to leave the girl hanging because she works three jobs, and she's tired and she wants something to eat and she needs a GED. We're going to give her GED. But if she's hungry, we're going to refer her over there to Casey's food closet so she can get some food, right? If she
Mhm.
needs a place to stay, we're going to, send her over there to this housing so that she can do that. And now we're all friends and we're working this thing together. And I'm still staying in my lane doing what I do while you do what you do.